Did you see they identified the Zodiac Killer?
Gary?
Welcome to episode 11 of the RAGAMUFFIN Music Podcast. I'm Alex.
I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
And this is a place for us to talk about the music we love. Every month we get together, talk about the latest news and alternative music, share our thoughts on the newest releases, and discuss a few different topics in the world of heavy music.
Today we'll be reviewing the 10th album from Trivium, titled In the Court of the Dragon, Fragments of a Bitter Memory, which is the debut album from Dying Wish, plus singles from Stick to Your Guns, Idols, Boston Manor, and more.
And in our discussion, we'll be talking about which bands we want to bring back.
But first, let's look at the news. And the news is not fun.
No, there's some depressing shit news.
Bloodstock director has posted transphobic comments online and has taken a step back from the festival. Vicky Hungerford, a director for the festival, posted, "If you're going to start putting pronouns on your email so I can refer to you as he, him, or she, her, I'm binning your emails." This isn't new from her. A post back from 2018 said, "For the love of God, can we stop with all this gender-neutral bullshit?" According to a statement from Bloodstock, she's now taking a step back from the festival and, quote, "will be taking the time to properly educate herself for a better understanding." So, Vicky, let me help you in your education. Discounting or disrespecting people's choice in pronouns is transphobic, and it makes you a piece of shit. So, I hope that helps.
Just no room for it nowadays. Educate yourself and sort your shit out.
Brutality will prevail, have called it a day. In a statement on social media, they just said that sort of they get to a point in their lives where priorities and interests change. Final shows will be taking place in 2022, but dates have yet to be announced. So, shame. A Day to Remember bassist Joshua Woodward has left the band. Allegations were made back in 2020, which were pretty much just ignored by A Day to Remember. I think they just hoped it would go away. But after they were announced as support for Bring Me's European tour, it all sort of came back up again, and he's now stepped away from the band. And keeping with the trend of pop punk bands being shit, all-time low. Someone on Twitter has counted 97 allegations against the band. They put a statement out which, I'll paraphrase in here, basically said, "We believe victims and we stand with victims, except for the ones that are accusing us because they're liars." Nothing Nowhere, Meet Me at the Altar have removed themselves off the tour and are touring separately on their own.
It's just more examples of loads of people have known about these allegations, and the bands have just failed to address them for so long until it's become an issue.
Yeah.
It's just another example of a band member being shitty and friends and other band members just allowing it to happen but not doing anything about it.
Yeah, especially in the case of the all-time low one, I've seen a lot of stories about underage fans being backstage or on the tour bus drinking, doing other substances with them. It just... And other touring bands that have been with them have seen it and not...
Some of the allegations date back to like 2006, 2007 as well.
So this has been going on for some time.
It's people that are kind of our age that were children at the time that are only now sort of having the courage to speak up.
In some good news, Betraying the Martyrs released a new song which debuts their new vocalist, and the song is pretty cool. And lastly, Max Portnoy is the drummer for Code Orange. Immense.
This is great news.
I can't wait. Seeing them now just elevates it to another level for me in particular.
Yeah, I love Code Orange, and Max Portnoy's drumming on Tyler's album is phenomenal, so yeah, they're going to take over. Should we talk about our recommendations then?
Let's.
James, what did you recommend for us last time?
So I recommended the self-titled album by Woven War, their debut album. What do you think?
I loved it. I was already familiar with this album. I remember when it came out, and listening to it again sort of brought back those like nostalgic feelings when we were first like discovering them after everything that happened with As I Lay Dying. And it just felt really exciting to see the rest of the band like thrive in this new style that was like, it's still them, but it's something completely new at the same time. I think Shane's vocals add such an incredible dynamic to the band, and sort of exploring how they write songs and adding clean vocals to the mix was so much fun.
Like listening back for me, myself, to be honest as well though, it made me sad they don't still exist, because I don't know how much you listened to them, their sophomore album. Shane's vocals just got even better, and I think like they had the chance they could have been bigger, but I think because of what was previously overshadowed, that kind of limited what they can do. But yeah, it is a great album. Dan?
I think that's good. It can feel a little generic at times. So for me, the stand-up points are actually the more ambient moments, like in the second half of Tempest, which is followed up by another highlight of mine, which was The Mason. I feel like the latter part of the album is the more interesting part. Father Son shakes things up emotionally before Profane shakes things up physically, and then A Matter of Time is a bit of a banger as well.
That's my favourite song on the album. I love like Jordan's drum parts and that, and then just have a song with Josh's vocals on all the way through. Amazing.
The sound kind of reminds me a bit of like a mix-up between two UK bands, While She Sleeps and Young Guns. I feel like they take the heavy parts of While She Sleeps and like the gang vocals and chanting they use quite well, and then the more kind of melodic ambient parts remind me a lot of Young Guns.
I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, I can see that.
That's an interesting dynamic. Dan, what did you recommend?
I recommended Biffy Clyro's. It was their latest album, it's not anymore, but Biffy Clyro's A Celebration of Endings. What did you guys think?
I thought it was sick. The thing that I love about Biffy is, I mean, Simon Neil has one of the most recognisable voices in alternative music, but musically I think they're really easy to distinguish, like, straight away. Like, you hear a riff and you just know that it's a Biffy riff.
A Biff riff.
A Biff riff. Yeah, I just love the album. The thing that I like about Biffy is there's always, like, a bit of tension. Like, they never go all in on, like, a straightforward, simple melodic idea. There's always, like, an undercurrent of whether it's, like, messing around with time signatures or, like, going into kind of, like, a jarring, heavy moment. But it never feels, like, out of place. It's, like, a fun sort of keep you on your toes thing, and this album was great. I think the first half was better for me, especially the run of the first 4 songs. Was it The Champ?
Yeah.
It was a standout, and Tiny Indoor Fireworks as well was great. And that was the only song I'd heard before listening to the whole album. And then the closing song, I think you said at the end of the last episode, was going to stick out, and it did. It was just, yeah, they're great. It just feels like very liberated writing. Like it doesn't feel like they've put any restrictions on themselves.
Yeah, it's like they just do whatever they fancy, really.
And it's just great. And yeah, I love it.
So for me, I've had some very limited listening to Biffy before. And like, you've created a playlist which I'm starting to get around to listening to more now, and this has given me the perfect excuse to listen to it more and make that effort. And like, one of the things I've always liked about them is, like you said, about the freedom in that they have the ability to like change the feel up for a song so much, and it's not jarring. It feels like seamless transitions, even though it can go from soft moments to heavy moments. And you hear that straight away with North of No South. It's a perfect kind of example of that, where you go for some heaviest riffage, then like really softer and more melodic sections. Tiny Indoor Fireworks as well was a really, really fun song. Really nice guitar parts. The vocals are on point, which isn't really to say much, because I feel like Simon Neil's vocals are just so consistently good. Like, you listen to any of it and you don't hear any points where you think, oh, that's a little bit off, or I'm not sure in the phrasing, or even lyrically, anything like that. It just seems like all the performances are just absolutely perfect and hit the nail on the head. I love the bass tone for End Of, and I think that would be a song that would be amazing at Download next year. I like how in the latter part of the song it kind of moves away from any kind of normality, and like you said, they just write whatever music they want to. And again, Cop Syrup, what a great way to end the album. Like, this wonderful chaos, the guitar work's phenomenal, the transitions are insane, and again, I pray that's at Download. And like, this feels like a really nice introduction to Biffy for me. And like, fuck, October's been stacked with releases, and now this makes me want to go back and listen to this new album they've just dropped. So I think I'm going to be checking that out.
I'm glad I've opened the door for you, James.
You have. It is firmly open, and I am bloody excited for Download next year as well.
Nice one, Dan.
You're welcome.
And what was it you recommended again, Alex?
I recommended Hours by Funeral for a Friend. What do you think?
So I haven't really had any exposure to them before, so this was kind of my first listen to them. My first thing right from the get-go, as soon as I heard All the Rage, was that is a lovely snare drum sound. Some nice guitar melodies throughout that track, and hearing the vocals instantly puts me back, feeling like I'm in the mid-2000s again, like I've been transported immediately. There's some nice drum grooves and riffs during the opening for Streetcar, which is really pleasant. I never thought I'd recognise any of their songs, but as soon as I heard Roses for the Dead, that riff, I was like, I've heard this before, I know this. And it's definitely a standout on the album. It's very well written. The guitar melodies and Hospitality were nice. overall, it did start to sound very similar going through the whole album and lost my interest slightly. And the mixy, muddy at parts of the album, but I'm trying not to expect too much from an album that's 16 years old. And kind of in that genre, you're not going to get the kind of mix that I'm used to listening to on albums. I think need to be in a very certain headspace to really get into it. But overall, it was a good standard album for me.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a classic early noughties emo album, isn't it?
Yeah.
Revisiting this era is always great from a nostalgia perspective. But I think it's always best if it's a band that you've listened to before and sort of you go back for that nostalgia hit.
Yeah.
With Funeral for a Friend, I didn't really listen to them at the time and I wasn't really into them that much. So because of that, I don't think the album's held up quite so well. Like James touched on briefly, the mix feels slightly off. There's some bits that feel like the vocals feel a bit lost in the mix at times.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to appreciate this album is to think about just how many modern day bands it's influenced and how many, listen out for the parts that bands that we're into now have borrowed from this album and maybe albums like this. And I know it's one of their biggest songs, but Roses for the Dead is the best song on the album.
Yeah. I can't overstate how good they are live. So please come with me to the Setter download. Let's get into the latest releases, starting off with Stitch Your Guns with More of Us Than Them. This is like a defiant return for them. Their last full length was back in 2017, so refreshing to have something new. The song is massive. It feels like their music comes at a time when it's sort of needed most because they're so socially and like politically on the pulse that it's always
like Nanny McPhee.
Like Nanny McPhee. It's like a bat signal in the sky whenever things are a bit turbulent. But like the opening lyrical refrain is like a rallying cry. I can imagine live it's going to feel immense to be in the crowd, like chanting along to that. Riff's hard all the way through. Jesse's vocals are sick, and then we have the end breakdown courtesy of Tom Searle, which just sort of makes this song feel so much more special. It's like a gift to still have new bits of music from Tom. So yeah, it just means a lot. What do you guys think of it?
It's far from my favourite from them, but still really enjoyed it. As you said, it's nice to hear a breakdown from Tom Searle in 2021, still living on through the music. And there's some cool lyrics in there. Set the world ablaze, nothing goes to waste. That, like you said, that's just a rally cry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Completely agree with you with that intro. I can see that being screamed by crowds when live, and that's going to create such a good atmosphere. There's a great drum sound on this. The production, that's fantastic. It creates such a solid backbone, I think, for the song. The melodic leads during the verse sections are lovely. There's some nice cool bass sections which are pushed higher in the mix, which hearing that prominence is always nice. The vocal performance, I think, is incredible. I think everything lyrically and tonally from the different ways his vocals are projected sound perfect for this song. Great riffs throughout, and it was a song I really found myself going back and listening to, especially out of all the ones we've had. And we've got some great singles that have been released this month, and for me, this was a standout as well. So, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Idols released The Beachland Ballroom, serving as the debut single for the upcoming album Crawler, and it's a big change of vibes for Idols. What do we think?
It's different, but I love it. It's quite bluesy. I feel like swaying to it, to the rhythm, which is quite relevant to the lyrics. The wind that turns the trees made me sway. Really cool video for it as well, and a surprising vocal performance from Joe. We've not heard this kind of soulful, bluesy sound from his vocal cords before. So, and then it switches up at the end to sound just peak Idols as well. With them screaming damage over and over again.
Yeah, I saw an interview where Joe described it as the most important song on the album, and even though we haven't had the album yet, I feel like I already agree. Like you said, Idols are so good at capturing like angst and aggression, and so for them to go to a completely different place, like emotionally, with this song, but then still have that same sort of release at the end where it just sort of explodes. Just incredible. And yeah, hearing Joe sing like this, hopefully there's a lot more of it on the album.
In terms of the songwriting, it's probably like the most simple. In terms of structure, it's probably the most simple song they've ever released. But
yeah,
it impacts so much more effectively.
The first half of the song is like the perfect example of less is more sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
such a stripped back nature to it, where it lets his vocals just soar that little bit more, because there's just loads of room for him to go. Yeah. What do you think, Jay?
So I've never really enjoyed Idols before. I think you've both known that. But I really like this, and I much prefer it to anything else they've released. The instrumentals in particular, especially the guitar tone, I think was really nice. And I think part of that reduction in the instrumental dynamics that you usually kind of get from them really allow for those vocals to take centre stage and kind of show him off more dynamically, I think, because you're always so used to mostly hearing that kind of shouting. And to hear that much more melodic musicality just coming from him, I think made it much more appealing for me in particular. I think there's some really good production on the song, and if there is more Idols like this, I will definitely enjoy that a lot more.
Boston Manor gave us Algorithm. This one got under my skin. Like, first listen, wasn't that impressed. Second listen, bit more, and then more and more times I've heard it, I've loved it more and more. I like the chorus, but I guess the criticism I have is that in the final chorus, Henry like belts it, and it feels really big, and I kind of wish he'd done that for all of the choruses throughout the song, just because it feels like it would have been a bit more of like peaks and troughs rather than sort of a plateau for a lot of the song. But the lyrics are really cool, I think, especially the line, "But the truth is, I was always useless, made excuses, I still do." I just think he writes really cool, interesting lyrics. And we got a new EP from them tomorrow, at time of recording. 29th of October, Desperate Times, Desperate Pleasures. 5 tracks. And, yeah. What do you think of this one?
They've been a band that have really grown on me this year, through more listens, through the singles they've released. I'm looking forward to hearing more releases from them, so I'm looking forward to that EP coming out tomorrow as of recording, and then hopefully reviewing that next month. Really, really enjoyable vocal performance. It's catchy lyrically and melodically, and I feel like you could find yourself humming or singing along to it really easily. And just a really chilled back vibe in the instrumentals. Some nice transitions going in and out of these different sections. It really flows. I don't think it's as good a song as Carbon Mono, but I still find it very enjoyable, and I'm going to be delving into Boston Manor when I have the time.
I thought it was good, but a bit forgettable, really. I've not had it kind of calling me back to have repeat listens or anything, really. Carbon Mono I loved, but this is kind of just floating in an abyss that I haven't revisited yet.
Fair enough. A new one from Mice and Men, Mosaic. What do you think?
Absolutely killer riffage from the start. Some really great use of panning on the guitars as well, which I loved. Instrumentals build nicely, and you can instantly tell that I think this is going to be a fun song to pit to. Drops from a fast pace into a nice like halftime groovy feel, with just the solid vocals we've heard throughout this year when they've had their EP releases. Nice cymbal work and drum fills, which really help transition the different sections of the song nicely. And then that bridge section features some lovely dissonance, which that always appeals to me. I know that shortly after this, they did release a second song and moved away from the 3 EPs that they were planning this year. And they've now combined the 2 EPs so far, Timeless and Bloom. And they're with this track and then another track called Fighting Gravity, which they released fairly recently as well. They're then going to be having an album coming out December the 3rd, which, like, based on this track, based on the EPs that have come out this year, we haven't heard the full album yet, but already it's going into contention for me for Album of the Year. They've had a phenomenal 2021 for me. I've only just got into them this year, and they've shot up in my Spotify listens, and I'm a fan of Mice and Men now, so I really enjoy Mosaic as well.
Yeah, of Mice and Men are taking no prisoners lately. This song's brutal from start to finish. Although it's not it's not my favourite of their recent songs. All of them are top quality. And I love the little like air raid siren breakdown. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that was something I picked out. Is that one of like the best uses of a sample this year? I think just putting an air raid siren over a breakdown. They've been thriving this year, and good for them. I feel like their reinvention this year has sort of overshadowed their golden era of like the Flood and Restoring Force, which,
yeah, I'd say so.
When you think of a Mice and Men, a lot of people would think to that, whereas now I think about what they've done this year, and it feels a lot more defining now. Yeah, like you said, they've taken no prisoners, and they've put themselves back to like the top of metalcore, I think. Veil of Maya released Outrun. This is a tune with a capital CH. Just a big fat soaring chorus, which is lovely, and then a guitar solo, which is lovely. That's really what I took away from this. Just everything that they did in this song, lovely.
So to sum up, Outrun.
Lovely. I don't know, what do you guys think?
It's just a fun song, isn't it? Great riffs, great clean vocals, a hectic breakdown out of nowhere at the end, and an incredible chorus as well. What's not to love?
This has been a band that I really found in the past year that I've then gone back into the old catalogue and loved. And so then hearing like the much more melodic side, especially since Lucas has come in and kind of the sound has changed up slightly, it's really welcoming. And you can see them experimenting more. There's more like electronics being used in this song. And you can see they're growing still. I think there's some great riffs from the start. They've really changed from that deathcore sound they used to have. I don't know if you've heard any of the older stuff. But that progression is so nice. Some really nice catchy lines in the chorus, and it changes up the feel for the song. The drum fills and cymbal work are on point from Sam Applebaum, which I think is a very underrated drummer. And then the end sequence has some really nice lead parts before dropping back into nice heavy groovy riffs to finish off with that wonderful little bit of dissonance sprinkled in. It was interesting for me to find out they scrapped an album in 2019. They weren't happy with it. They went back to the drawing board, and that's what's happened with Outsider, Viscera, and then this Outrun being released. And so they've gone back in the studio. These have come out of it, and I think we might be getting a new release hopefully in the coming months. So big up Vale and Wire. Very good.
Vengeance, a new one from August Burns Red. What do you guys think?
Well, I think like keeping on the theme of this episode so far and all the reviews we've had, it's just all about those riffs. There's just been some wonderful riffs throughout October. Straight from the start, it's an all-out assault.
Rifftober.
It is, it's Rifftober. There's a nice build that goes straight into some sweet screams and solid as fuck blast beats. Jake Lurs' vocals have fast become some of my favourite metalcore. They sound just so strong, and his vocal clarity, I think, is really starting to shine through more. Matt Griner's just a machine behind the drum kit. Another underrated drummer who I think provides some like really innovative and fun drum parts that, especially for me, keep me engaged so much. And it just happens time and time again. And his blast beats just sound like they have so much force and power behind them. Such a driving force. And then halfway like through the leads coming in, there's such a nice solo, which is not really a August Burns Red kind of thing. So that kind of come out sideways, which was really, really nice. And it's just another great song from this band. And after releasing Guardians early last year, they're already now releasing more singles. So I think it's another product of the pandemic, getting bands back in the studio and releasing more music, which I very much welcome from them.
Yeah, it's wild from start to finish. I think that there was a danger of it potentially becoming just another fast, heavy song from a metalcore band. But the way they change up the tempo and keep the beat interesting avoids that danger. And they've done a really good job with it.
Upon a Burning Body released Snake Eyes. This band is solid. I wish they were bigger, because I think they're really good. And the thing that I like about them is like they have a really easily recognisable guitar tone and like the style of riffs, which we've heard all the way back from like the early days. The way they sort of lace their sort of like Mexican heritage, like musical heritage, into their style of riffs and the solos. So cool. And also Danny Leal sounds great. I think the two like most important things about doing like harsh vocals is, can you understand them and can you hear emotion coming through it? And he ticks both those boxes, because some vocalists sometimes it feels like they're sort of just going through the motions when they're screaming, whereas with him I feel it a little bit. And I just liked it. It kind of went quite groovy. It was thrashy at times. You could hear like a solid Pantera influence, which
they've definitely referenced that before.
That is my
Texas Blood Money.
Yeah, so yeah, solid. I love Upon a Burning Body.
It's just a really good, fun metal song, innit? You can't resist headbanging to this. It just has to be done. I mean, James can vouch for me. He was present the first time I listened to it, and it was like I was in a trance, just stationary, headbanging and bopping along to it. There's a little bit in the middle where it kind of breaks down and everything just drops for a little bit out of nowhere before it all kind of comes back into the main riff again, and it's just so much fun.
It is. It's just groovy riffs from the get-go, and just a nice build into that fast, energetic verse. Again, I same as Dan, had my head instantly bobbing, and as soon as Danny's vocals entered, it just gave me memories of 16-year-old me listening to their old albums, because it's that kind of nostalgia for me. Some nice catchy lyrical parts which will have you singing along in repeat listens. These snare drum sounds lovely. The way the toms have been mixed in sections which they appear really allows them to sing through. Like you said, absolutely lovely breakdown, and I think it kind of reminded me as a listener that although they've developed so much from their like early deathcore sound, they can still go back to those older and heavier roots. Like, they're still dangerous. They can still tap into that. I just really enjoyed it. It came out of nowhere for me, so hopefully there's more material soon.
I would love to see them live as well.
I've had the privilege of that, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it's just mad to think they used to be a deathcore band, and then they kind of switched into metalcore, and then they feel like you said, that kind of groove metal, kind of thrash metal vibe now. They've been able to be so diverse and still produce some fantastic music, which I think is very impressive. Not many bands can actually pull that off and still write good songs, so fair play to them.
Knocked Loose dropped a surprise EP, A Tear in the Fabric of Life, a concept EP that had an accompanying animated short film. And this was just really cool. Sort of seeing them explore a narrative, it's just a really interesting concept, because sometimes with concept albums it worries me a little bit, like, does the story hold up or does it translate well? And I think the way that they explore this story, which is of a car crash that leaves a man's partner dead, and then you got kind of follow his descent into like grief and guilt, and you feel it like through the music just as much as through the lyrics. Like, there's genuine like moments of chaos and panic and like actual despair, and it's mirrored really well with what they do in the like animation. What do you guys think?
It's awesome. It starts off at full throttle with a pummeling kick drum carrying the chuggy and squealy guitars through that could pierce more ears than Claire's accessories. All topped off with Brian wailing over them. Forced to Stay, I think, is my favourite. Some of the drum fills and cymbal work were just sublime.
That was my favourite as well.
And they just complement the lead guitar perfectly. Permanent is also devastatingly good. I think what they've done brilliantly with this EP is they've done a great job of creating little breaks and fills with breaks using fills and ambient guitars to kind of give sort of a little moment's respite before going back into just pure thrashing heaviness.
For me, this is like my first proper exposure into Not Loose, apart from knowing about Counting Worms as dog bark, mostly from hearing you play all the time, Alex. So as soon as like we found out this was released, it was something I was very intrigued to kind of delve into as a new listener for them. I've always found hardcore a little bit difficult from the vocal style from some bands, and I think this EP is now a turning point for me a little bit. Like you say, there's so much emotion that I can feel conveyed in the performance, and I think that really captured me and really pulled me into this EP in particular. I love the build up and the sudden burst in with that real like kind of dirty heaviness in the riffs, and the drum beats that just bound to get your head banging. The vocals are unrelenting throughout the whole EP. They really just capture attention from the get-go. I agree with both of you. Forced to Stay, I think, is the highlight for me. Great drum intro section that builds before the verse sections come in, and the tempo changes. It keeps your attention. It's like a roller coaster, this song. Wonderful sections, like you said, where the cymbal work takes a really nice forefront for a brief time. That I listened to that and it was absolutely phenomenal. Small bass intro for Return to Passion was a nice little switch up as well. Fun little clean guitar parts that really get dropped in out of nowhere. It just really keeps you engaged throughout the whole EP. Like you said, there's those little moments that give you that respite, and because it's so in your face, so aggressive, so full on, it gives you those kind of moments to be like, oh, okay, I need a breather. And it very much kind of gave me that vibe of like seeing videos of them performing, especially. You're going to need a breather at those moments. You're going to need that time to catch your breath. Permanent, again, it's a great closer. It ties the EP together beautifully, I think. The vocals really stand out in a great performance. Lovely riffs. Tasteful ride cymbal work, which was chef's kiss. Beautiful. And the way the song really slowed down at the end felt like it was lulling me to sleep, almost like the whole EP was a dream. But thankfully it's real and it's great. And overall, for like 20 minutes of musical listening, it feels like it's longer. Like, saying that as a number, it doesn't feel justified and doesn't feel real with that. And yeah, I am definitely a fan of this.
I feel like they do a really good job of like world building as well. Like you hear the car radio, flicking through the tuning at the beginning, the car crash, the I think, is it the Beach Boys at the end of God Knows, like that sample?
Yeah.
That sort of, and then it like gets all distorted. In the video as well, there's like the sound of like shovel, like hitting the earth and digging a hole. It just, all these little things that add up to, yeah, you get very much immersed in the story that unfolds.
You can tell they put the time into it, and they pulled it off perfectly. It's fantastic.
And James, you mentioned Counting Worms has reminded me. I forgot to note down which song it was in. Maybe we can add the song title and a timestamp here in the edit. But there's a little callback to Counting Worms. I'm gonna have to try and find it again.
Is there?
Oh,
You know the little like.
Oh yeah. I can't remember what song it's in.
Oh, you noticed it as well then.
Yeah. But I can't remember what song it's in. Yeah, I love Not Loose.
just leave it there.
We love Not to Lose.
Yes, as a collective.
Let's talk about Fragments of a Bitter Memory by Dying Wish. I'm gonna say it. Best debut album of the year.
I agree.
I'm eating a chocolate finger.
Daddy's chocolate finger. Alex, do you want to take it off?
Just riffs for days. This whole album feels like it's taken all of the best things about 2000s metalcore, the best era of metalcore, and then brought them back with like a modern touch to them. And I reckon if you made a list of the 10 best riffs of the year, half of them would be from this album. Special shout out to Emma Boster's vocals. Like I said with Danny Leal, the thing that sets her apart is that you can hear like genuine anguish and pain in her voice sometimes, and you can feel what she's saying. And I think that elevates every single song, especially when you get songs like the title track, which is obviously a very personal song when you look at the lyrics. And just all the way through, it's incredibly intense, relentless, which is what I want. It's just 30 minutes of unrelenting energy. And if you're listening, Dying Wish, a UK tour, please.
Oh, please come to UK. I mean, what a great start to the album with Cowards Fear, Cowards Bleed. It's just not pulling punches from the get-go. Her vocals, Emma's vocals, are just incredible throughout. And I think that intro track really lets you know, like, for the next 30 minutes, yeah, you're in for a ride. The Tom intro on Hollow by Affliction in particular was lovely. And I think just the drum performance in general was just so pleasant to hear. Like, in this genre, blast beats are so prominent, especially like on ride cymbals. And for me, it's important that you still kind of get that diversity and it doesn't feel too samey, too repeated, and you get good tones from it. And I think the production they have on the cymbals, especially on this album, kept it fine. And you're getting blast beats scattered throughout most of the songs, especially with the ride cymbal. It didn't feel stale. It didn't feel samey. It didn't get boring. It still felt absolutely fantastic. And whilst on the subject of cymbals, I really want to steal the China because it just sounds gorgeous. I love the 9/8 time signature during In 8 Thirst. Captured my attention immediately and then switches into just a more conventional straight meter. Again, great use of the toms. Riffage takes centre stage and gives me like those old vibes of like 2000s metalcore. It kind of gave me An Ocean Between Us kind of guitar riffs from that era. And the breakdown of that song is so simple and effective, but they really just demand your focus and keep your attention. The title track, again, still stands out to me, I think, as song of the album. I don't think I'm pushing the boat out too far by saying this is one of the standout songs of the year. I
agree.
The songwriting for it, the musical performance, the riffs match the drum sounds perfectly when you kind of have little... the notes kind of copy in terms of timing between then the cymbals and the guitar and then also the double bass in the guitar. And there's still that variance in there between it. And even just the sung vocals of Where Did Your Love Go just calls through the heaviness. The song structure is fantastic and it just really shows off, I think in that one song in particular, everything this band is capable of. And I love that song. The last section of the album as well, the instrumentation for Blood-Laced Misery is fantastic. Enemies in Red, another beautiful drum intro. Drowning in the Silent Black is a really strong closer to wrap up the album. And I want to remind us about the fact that this is a debut album. Again, I know you said it. And for 30 minutes, for their first ever release, it's just incredible. And I'm struggling to understand that this is their first release and something of this caliber. And I think straight away, it's like you said, it's an album of the year contender. And it's a lovely reminder still again And we've had this multiple times throughout the year, that metal is in just such a great place right now. It's thriving and it is fantastic.
It's not just metal in general as well, but women in metal.
Yeah.
They're doing an incredible job at the moment. Vocals in this track are fantastic, and not just the screams, but the clean vocals on songs such as Severing the Senses and Until Morning Comes are brilliant. Everything that's great about this album showcased really early on. Cowards Feed, Cowards Bleed. What an intro to an album that is. Incredible vocals, thumping drums with some great fills, some brutal guitar tones, and unpredictable tempo changes all the way throughout the album. What a debut.
This is very much an album I could talk about for such a long time because I think there are just so many great aspects to it, and it seems so meticulously planned, perfectly written, performances just on point completely. And if you're just listening to this and you're like, oh, I need to find out some new music, go listen to this. Go and check it out because it will blow you away.
I'm going to sound like such a knobhead when I say this, but I've been listening to them since their split EP with Serration, and it's so cool to see like the sort of whole metalcore community now acknowledging how good Dying Wish are, because I've known since that split like the potential they've had, and their songwriting's been incredible. So yeah, Fragments of a Bit of Memory, best debut of the year. A new album from Trivium, In the Court of the Dragon. What do we think?
I bloody love this band. I think the title track we reviewed before, I still love it, and it's still everything I want from Trivium. Like a Sword Over Damocles is just wonderful. There's some great riffs. Alex Bent's cymbal work is just so clean and nice. And I think him being their drummer when he joined really just elevated them up to 11. I think they were always good, but he's just added a different dynamic, which is incredible. Matt's vocals also get a chance to really show their range on that, and I think his screams especially is sounding incredible now. A Crisis to Revelation, that intro, holy fuck. It's amazing, it's frantic, perfectly placed drum hits in a mini solo, wonderful riffage, and then heavy Trivium really at their best. And then we go like into the chorus where it's beautifully melodic, switches back into the heaviness perfectly, and some really nice virtuosity throughout the song. And I found myself just going back to listen to this song in particular and just giving this on its own repeat listens. The Shadow of the Abattoir has some lovely melody lines in it. We've never really been exposed to much of like a stripped down Trivium, and this is kind of the closest we get to it. And parts really give us that insight into what else they could do and how else they could venture, and maybe more of their future. And I really want them to explore more of this in the future with that. And the mellowed out verse sections transition nicely into that chorus where the song really just crescendos with some nice lyrics. Another sick drum intro for Fall Into Your Hands. The production on the toms and the cymbals is just incredible. And like I said, there's just a great drum sound across the record. But this is like the part of it where you kind of get that focus where it can stand out and shine the most. And they've become a band that have really perfected what they do, I think, and have earned the right to do whatever they want. They're 10 albums in. They've got so much notoriety now, and they're a band that they just need to be headline download status. I know we've said this before. I'm going to keep banging on about it. They do what they do perfectly. It's fantastic. It was weird listening to this compared to some of the other things we've released, we reviewed this month, because their songs are so much longer, a little bit. So that was a bit jarring slightly, maybe. But I love this band. I love this record. Trivium killed it.
I love the title track, but unfortunately once I got to maybe about track 4, I was starting to feel it was getting a little repetitive. I was getting a little bit bored. I don't know, maybe there's something about this style of metal that just doesn't do anything for me. But then, Fall Into Your Hands brought me back with high energy and incredible drumming in the intro. And then the second half of the album was much better, much more enjoyable for me. To me, it's an okay album, but unfortunately has some clear standout songs that completely overshadow some of the others.
Yeah, that's a similar sort of impression that I got, is that there are definitely songs on here that are definite additions to the set list. Title track, I think Feast of Fire, Fall Into Your Hands as well. I don't know, I don't want an album to go for 50 minutes, personally. It's exhausting. But when they're good, they're great. They're one of the best metal bands going. Alex Bent's drum work is just incredible. He's one of the, He's one of the best modern metal drummers going. And like you said, he's elevated this band, who were already amazing, into something that's unstoppable. Dan, should we talk about Amazing Things?
By Don Broco.
By Don Broco. What was your sort of impression of the album?
I think overall it's a great album. I feel like they've embraced the kind of meme culture that they've now based themselves around. I feel like as a long-time Don Broco fan, it's a great album. I love some of the riffs. Vocally it's great. Lyrically, it's kind of lacking at times. But I think because I've known Don Broco for a while, I understand that a lot of it's just a joke.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Willis, for example, that song's just
ridiculous, isn't it?
It's just so silly. The video especially.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I was someone that hadn't listened to Don Broco before, didn't understand the band, and I was to listen to this album, I would absolutely hate it. I don't think I'd get it. I think it would be just odd.
Yeah. I feel like we've seen that happening with James. Like, as the singles have all come out, we've sort of watched James not really get it. And, yeah, like you said, with Don Broco, it's been a very sort of gradual progression to this sort of absurd, like, state that they're in. Where, if you weren't on board early on, I think it's a difficult one to get into, first of all. But they have some standout songs. I think a lot of the singles especially were my favourite songs, and also the videos and the like effort they've put into the campaign, like from the David Beckham spam on their social media through to the release of the album. Like, yeah, they've embraced their sort of meme status really well. Uber, I think, was my favourite song. And
that's interesting, because that's probably one of my least favourites on the album.
Really?
Mm.
I don't know, I think it was the one that sort of just felt the most genuine, like lyrically, maybe. I think it's, to me, it was maybe the most serious song, other than maybe One True Prince. So I think that maybe that's what sort of attracted me to it more. But overall, yeah, fun, and a lot of songs that live are going to just slap like they always do.
Yeah, it does feel like it's an album that's built for a live setting rather than a recorded sit down, listen to kind of thing. I think there's one to listen to with your mates on like a car journey or pre-drinks or something.
Yeah.
I think my favourite at the moment is Endorphins. But I don't know if that's because the riff from it is basically a straight rip from Thug Workout.
Oh shit.
Alex just realising that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really like Bad For Your Health as well.
Yeah. And special shout out to that Beckham lookalike that they must have on retainer now, because
who would win in the fight between the David Beckham lookalike and the Cowboy?
The Cowboy is so just unhinged, I think.
Video idea for you there, lads.
Yep. Overall, was it an amazing thing?
I don't know about amazing. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Not amazing.
Yeah. A special shout out as well to This Wildlife and Can't Swim for dropping amazing albums this month. We just didn't have time to all listen to everything to review it all, but those two albums are worth checking out.
We've only got one pair of ears. Each.
Let's look at the upcoming releases. On the 29th of October, Whitechapel will release Kin, and Boston Manor will release Desperate Times, Desperate Pleasures. On the 5th of November, we've got Bullet for My Valentine's self-titled album, and See You Space Cowboys, The Romance of Affliction. On the 12th, Silent Planet will release Iridescent, and Idols will release Crawler. The 19th will see Volumes Happier. Out of that list, what are you guys excited for most?
I am going to go between Whitechapel and Boston Manor. Very different.
I'm really looking forward to that new Idols album. I'm surprised to have a new one so soon from them. And from interviews and things that I've read, it sounds like that they're wanting to take a step in a new direction and experiment a bit more. So, quite excited to hear what they come up with.
Yeah, that Idols one is going to be really interesting, I think. Can't wait. Gig talk time. So we saw Blood Youth at Jericho Tavern in Oxford. It was interesting.
Interesting, yes.
Blood Youth was sick. Death Blooms were cool, but the crowd was just weird.
It was an interesting group of people. I think I took away most that I really want to see Blood Youth at a bigger venue with more of a crowd there. Like there'd be a really, really great support for some other bands, and it kind of made me miss the fact we didn't see them at Slam Dunk. I enjoyed their set. I thought they were great. I came away from it singing songs and becoming a much bigger fan of the band still. And then listening to them Visions of Another Hell. I'm absolutely enjoying this band. I think it's one of my favourite albums of this year at the moment. I keep finding myself going back and listening to it, mostly I think as well off the back of this performance. For me, yeah, it was a really, really enjoyable gig.
Yeah, Blood Youth were brilliant. Harry, the new vocalist, did a good job as well. I had my doubts, but he's put those to bed completely. He was brilliant. Like you mentioned, there was a few people in the crowd that were enjoying themselves a bit too much and not worrying about others, which is a good thing for them, but not so good for other people that were around them, perhaps. But it was a really nice evening. The support acts were great as well. The support acts were great as well. Death Blooms were good, but Lestelle were fantastic, as were Lonesome. It was on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, great shout out to those two as well.
I think it was just a shame. We all I think when we arrived, we were all undecided about whether or not we would be pitting that night, and then we saw the state of Death Bloom's pit, and we were like, no,
This is not happening.
not interested. But yeah, Harry fitted in really well. I think they sounded great. I hate to say it about our own hometown, but I just don't think Oxford gigs are that good. I just don't think the crowd is ever that good.
Can we revisit that when we come around to Architects, please?
Yeah, definitely. But like, it reminded me a bit of when years ago when we all went and saw King 810, and the pit was basically us and some of our mates. And yeah, I don't know. It's a shame because it's so nice when bands come through our...
I guess heavy music just isn't a popular thing in this area.
Yeah.
It's more of a big city thing.
Yeah, just a shame. But the night after, we saw Bring Me the Horizon. Weren't they incredible?
More incredible than the underwhelming sound in your voice from that. Bring Me the Horizon.
So deadpan.
Sorry.
Bring Me the Horizon. We saw
Bring Me the Horizon.
They were fantastic. The stage production was amazing.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned it before, Dan, and I deliberately stayed away from watching any videos at all because I wanted just to take it in when we got there. And it was phenomenal. My last time seeing them, my only time seeing them beforehand was All Points East, and I was left a little bit disappointed coming off the back of that. I don't think Ollie sounded great when we saw them then, and I think other bands on that day just really overshadowed them, and I think like Sleeps and Architects in particular put on some great performances that I can still think back, and those were amazing. So kind of going into this, it completely changed, I guess, what I had in my head of them at a live gig, because the set list for me in particular I think was one of the best set lists I could get. There was a mix from different albums, but it was catered to a slightly heavier set list. House of Wolves for me was phenomenal. Shadow Moses was amazing. Dear Diary was phenomenal. Parasite Eve, it was just all fantastic, and I had
Parasite Steve,
yeah, big shout out there. It was just a fantastic gig and absolutely loved it.
It's interesting you say that you love the set, because at one point I looked over, I think it was when they were playing Drown, and you had just stood perfectly still.
I think I was just trying to catch energy because, like...
I just wasn't sure if you were just tired or just didn't enjoy the song. But I'd looked over, everyone was moving just even a little bit, and you were just like completely still, just looking.
I was tired. Like, weirdly, like, some of the pits they had were just unexpected for different moments in songs, and I think that
was wild, wasn't it?
Kingslayer, it went absolutely huge in the arena, and I think that struck me a little bit, because then I see that and I'm like, well, I'm getting involved. And then it was kind of just no let up as well. There wasn't much time in between songs where you could catch your breath. They were pretty much one after another, just banging out these absolute tunes, and it was high energy and it was hard work. Came away from it exhausted.
Well, there were thousands and thousands of people in that room, and towards the end of the set I ended up quite far back, but everyone was still moving. There was still no chance for a rest. It was just opened up constantly, being pushed around like a sea all the time. But it sounds like I'm complaining. That's what we love here.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Great gig.
Also, Unit 6 were good as well.
Yeah.
Very fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I was disappointed that they left a few older songs out of their set, with it being a Bring Me the Horizon support slot.
Yeah.
But it was good fun.
Also, the Ollie not coming out for Bite My Tongue, I think we've said before, just felt like a waste of an opportunity. Like, he's in the same building, and he's probably doing vocal warm-ups. Just go out and do it. Go back.
Yeah,
They did it in London.
A London only, London exclusive.
Livid. James, you saw Architects.
Yes, I did. Revisiting slightly, just to start off with that Oxford thing, this was incredibly loud from the crowd, and everyone was loving it. I'm pretty sure I saw one or two people that went to the Blood Youth gig, and so immediately I look back at that and I think I had a little bit of PTSD initially. But no, it's absolutely fantastic. The new songs really translated amazingly live. I came away in particular singing Little Wonder, which wasn't one of my favourites going into it, and it's now become one of my favourites coming out of the gig. And I think that's one of the big things I really just love about seeing live music is you can go into it with all kinds of presumptions, or I'm going to go and hear my favourite song, or I'm looking forward to hearing this, or I'm not too fussed about seeing this one live. But you come away with it with a very different perspective, and I think that's just something pretty magical about the whole experience. Closing off with Animals was just fucking incredible. It was just the guitar tone timing with the bass drum was perfect, and it was like a heartbeat. It was thumping through your chest. Just such a great gig. Even the old tunes that were scattered throughout, like Nihilist, amazing. Gravedigger, amazing. Gone with the Wind, phenomenal. They said they had so much emotional connection with Oxford, and they said they're going to come back again, and fuck, I can't wait for that to happen because it was such a great night. But at that same night, you guys went and see Nothing But Thieves.
I was going to say, it's a good job that Architects are going to be back at Oxford again, because me and Alex missed out, because we already had tickets to see Nothing But Thieves in London.
Yeah.
How was it for you, Alex?
It was very fun. I had seated tickets, which I've been to before at the O2, and it is a bit underwhelming. Not underwhelming, I don't know, it's just a very different experience. You don't...
You're quite far away up there, aren't you?
Yeah. You sort of get to take in sort of the atmosphere of the whole room, whereas when you're in the pit, you don't think about the thousands of people that are still behind you. So it was cool to see sort of the whole floor, everyone moving all at once, and the production was quite cool. I'd like to have seen them use a bit more. It was a bit minimal, but yeah, just they were really fun. Just the problem with like arenas, which we said at Bring Me, is that people just never get in with enough time. The main support, I can never pronounce. Is it Yonaka?
Yonaka, I think.
Yonaka was half full to maybe 3/4 full. I think you missed it, didn't you?
Yeah, I missed all the supports.
I missed the first support because bloody London traffic. But yeah, it's just frustrating when the queues outside the like arena room are so bad that you're missing bands. It was the same with us trying to see Nova Twins at Bring Me.
When I was trying to get in, actually, I joined what I thought was the back of the queue. And then I had someone quite angrily go, no. And I turned around and was like, is this not the back of the queue? And they were like, no, it's further that way. But because obviously it's like a big shopping centre outside, I thought that it was just some people that were walking that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of just stepped in front of them. And they were like, no, this is the queue.
How dare you?
And then I had to walk another like 250 metres to join the back of the queue. And this is like maybe an hour before Nothing But Thieves started. So there was still support bands on at that time. So many people still trying to get in. But once we were in, it was a good time. It was nice just to have a couple of drinks and have a bit of a chilled one. Just watching a band from a distance rather than getting too involved and too hot and sweaty.
Yeah, it was the same vibe for me, just watching, just enjoying them playing, yeah. Very fun.
And appreciating just how great Connor's vocals sound, especially in a room that size.
Yeah. At times it's almost like operatic, what he does, like vocally. He's so impressive. They sounded great. Amsterdam was great. But I think Impossible was my favourite song of the night. Just felt so
It's
huge.
up there. I think Impossible was my favourite when I saw them in Oxford back in September, I think, the month before. I was really disappointed when I saw them in Oxford that they didn't play Particles, and they played a new like stripped back version in London, so that was nice. That was worth waiting for.
And if you want to catch footage of these gigs, there's a thing in the top corner for all of our vlogs. Go check them out.
That or this or that. That or this or that. That or this or that. That or this.
That or this time. Ooh, it's a spooky one because it's Halloween. I've set up another tournament bracket, and today we're going to determine the coolest, most metal horror villains.
I don't know what to say to his mum.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So, first up, Ghostface or Chucky?
I'm going to go with Ghostface. I feel like the black robes in particular, it's like more metally, more like, I don't know, black metal kind of robe. I don't know. The dress up more, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just like that kind of stage presence. It reminds me of, not black metal, but then Sleep Token. More of that kind of what you could visually see on a stage, and Chucky doesn't seem as metal to me.
When I think of Chucky, I always remember a music video by a band called Polaris from years ago, where they've got basically a Chucky doll following them to their band practice and stalking them. So for purely that reason, I'm going to go for Chucky.
I mean, he's a doll. It's not very metal, is it? It's Ghostface, I think. Next up, Michael Myers versus Pennywise.
I think Michael Myers, Pennywise doesn't come across as metally at all. Nah, just not happening.
I think you can argue a case for Pennywise, but when he's up against Michael Myers, yeah, it's not happening.
Michael Myers, the GOAT. Michael Myers. Oh, this is a little side question. Who's scarier, Michael Myers or Mike Myers?
Oh, definitely Mike Myers. Definitely. He does Shrek. Come on, that's scary.
Shrek's not scary. Shrek's lovely.
Shrek is life.
No. The next matchup, I had to do it, is Jason versus Freddy.
I was going to lean towards Freddy, but then I'm going to switch it back to
It
Jason.
gets you in your dreams, James, in your nightmares.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch back to Jason. It's something about the hockey mask, I think. It just seems more metally to me. Kind of has those parallels a little bit to Mick Thompson in terms of that hockey mask, and that's metal as fuck with Slipknot, so I'm going to go with Jason Voorhees.
You don't see many people in metal wearing a stripy jumper.
Yeah,
That's a good one there.
He's got a point.
So that and the mask, I think it's got to be Jason.
Yeah, well, it's majority anyway, but I agree, Jason. And lastly, Pinhead versus Leatherface.
I'm going to go with Pinhead. Get that Craig Jones kind of vibe. The all black outfit, I think, is very like more evil, more like metally, more satanic. So yeah, Pinhead.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Pinhead basically is a member of Slipknot.
Yes.
So
Yeah, Pinhead, obviously.
No arguments there.
Okay, so the first semi-final, Ghostface versus Michael Myers. I think Michael Myers.
Reasoning?
Just, I don't know.
it's a scarier mask.
Just
I
the
think.
the imposing sort of, his imposing nature.
Yeah.
It's just like this unstoppable force. The shape.
The mask as well. I think that plays an important factor to that. It's very emotionless, and I think that's much more like scary, heavier.
He has some spooky piano music played wherever he goes as well.
That's always a bonus, isn't it?
Mm.
So yeah, there you
Michael
go.
Myers. And the other semi-final, Jason versus Pinhead.
I'm gonna go with Pinhead.
It's a tough.
I'm thinking Pinhead. Mostly again from the previous like point made with that. I think it's very metally, very gothy, kind of that kind of vibe that I'm getting from it.
They're basically both Slipknot members.
They are.
Or at least they've inspired
Yeah.
Slipknot
Hmm.
masks.
I mean,
But-
Pinhead's from hell.
Exactly.
That's pretty mad.
That's quite metal, isn't it?
Pinhead for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from just if you look at them visually as well, like how disturbing they look, I think Pinhead is a little bit more disturbing as well. So
Yeah.
Pinhead
So-
gets that.
The big final, Michael Myers versus Pinhead. Who is more metal?
Who's more metal? I'm gonna go with Pinhead. I think Michael Myers is. You can say he's metal, but I think like if you're just to look at them visually, I think Pinhead just edges that way slightly more in the dial for me. I think in terms of saying yeah he's metal.
I'm going for Michael Myers, just so that Alex has a difficult
Oh,
choice.
no.
Oh, here we go. The
Hate
decision.
it when you do this.
I can't believe you've done this.
Talk us through what you're thinking.
I'm thinking Michael Myers, iconic. In my head, they're best friends.
They can form their own band.
Pinhead.
Reasoning?
I'm just picturing the bit in the film where he's like, "We will tear your soul apart." That's pretty metal.
And then what happens?
Oh, I think he tears their soul apart. Can't remember actually. The most metal horror icon, Pinhead.
Our friends in Against the Sun did a little cover of Dead Man's Party. Nice little Halloween kind of themed song. What do you think of it?
It just rocks. We love this band. They're so much fun. And when they sent it to us, we just knew it was perfect for this spooky episode.
Yep, really great cover, good fun. Brad's vocals stand out as they always do. The riffage and everything else is just groovy.
I really like the high bass in the mix. And again, the snare drum sounds perfect. They've sounds like they put more time into the production, and I think that really stands out. Like you said, guitar tones are nice, the riffs are groovy, a really great and strong vocal performance, and I think they nail the cover and really make it their own. The pinched harmonic right at the end got a really great reaction from me just to close off the song, and it's just solid and a great listen. And I think one of the best things about this band that we've discovered them through this, but they're really starting to come into their own a bit more. And seeing clips of them like on social media performing, hearing these singles being released throughout the year, I think they're really growing into their own. And I'm looking forward to maybe a potential album in the future. It'll be very intriguing to see that kind of get formed up. So here you go. This is Against the Sun with Dead Man's Party.
All dressed up with nowhere to go. Walking with a dead man over my shoulder. Waiting for an invitation to arrive. Going to a party where no one's alive. I was struck by lightning, walking down the street. I was hit by
today's discussion, Back from the Dead.
Spooky.
We've had a think about which bands we would like to bring back from the dead, whether it's reviving past members, bands that have just broken up, or if you want to just return a band to an OG lineup. So we've all had a bit of a think. Jay, who's your first band?
It's my first one. I'm just going to start nice and simple, nice and easy. I'm going to send Chris Adler back to Lamb of God. It was disappointing to hear him leave, and as much as I love this band still, I can't listen to their newer stuff in the same way. They sound a bit more like a factory machine now anyway in terms of what they churn out, but there was still something I think about Adler's drum performance that just kept me listening to them, and that always just kept me intrigued. And yeah, now that he's gone, I don't find myself as interested in hearing about newer releases. I'm not as interested to try and see them live, but if they're at a festival, I'll probably catch them. But it's just kind of led to a decline in my listening to Lamb of God, to be honest. So there is my first one.
Got a favourite Lamb of God album?
Sacrament or Ashes of the Wake. Between the two of those, there's some
Sacrament's the go.
Sacrament I know for you, but I think between those two, some absolute bangers there. But yeah.
Dan, who's a band you'd like to bring back?
I'm going to start with probably the most cliche one, and it's Modern Baseball. Everyone loved Modern Baseball. They patched a hole in everyone's hearts and made everyone feel good. So it'd be nice to have them back, but only if they're all up for it. You know, I'd understand the reasons why they split up. So
Yeah.
as long as they're all up for doing it, I'd be well up to seeing them. I've never seen them live. I never saw them live as well. So it's another motivation for me to put them back together.
I got like proper into them as well once they'd broken up. So
That's just sad.
I sort of missed like being a proper fan of them while they were active. Oh, what a band. That's a great pick.
How about you then? What have you got? What are you thinking?
My first one is Pantera. Just a band that sort of... I got into a very weird mix of bands when I was like in my formative years. You know, sometimes when you hear a band and you're so young, it just sticks with you. And this is one, and I think it's so sad to think about what happened to Dime, and now with Vinny being gone as well. Yeah, it just breaks my heart. I mean, I know Phil Anselmo's a bit... yeah. But I watched like the live video of them playing Domination in Russia. If you've not seen it, it's like just a sea of people. It's ridiculous. And yeah, in their prime, one of the coolest bands. So
Again, they've had so much of an influence over what we listen to now as well. So many bands cite them as inspirations for them. They're just such a big part of just heavy music. So yeah, I like that. That's a good one. Another one for me is bringing back the Rev, and kind of going back to what I have as and perceive as the best era of Avenged Sevenfold, around about like their self-titled album. Something about like when his vocals were cut in and stuff, like A Little Piece of Heaven. He was just great, and he kind of really brought new ways of drumming around.
like that double ride.
The double ride is just so iconic, and it's such a staple of the Avenged sound. You look at behind the scenes stuff from when they're recording like the self-titled album, and you see kind of what he's like behind the scenes, how pivotal he was in terms of songwriting, which some people don't always expect from a drummer, and stuff like when you get onto Nightmare, obviously it was after his passing, but you still have his piano work on Fiction and things like that. I think, and his vocals, yeah. You kind of have that scattered amongst it still, but after that, it very much changed for Avenged, I think, and I think going back to that kind of era for them and seeing that live would be something pretty incredible, to be honest.
Another one for you, Dan?
My next one, I think, is a bit predictable for anyone that knows me. It's Lower Than Atlantis. They're my favourite band for such a long time. I think if they did reform, I'd preferably like them in their older sound, their kind of Far Q world record sound. I miss seeing Eddie Thrower behind the kit. I know he plays live as a session musician now and does his own things, but him live with London Atlantis was just amazing. And Mike Juice was just such a fun frontman live. Another one for you?
It would be The Sweet, just because They were a band from like the 60s and 70s that, I don't know, it's an era that I would love to have experienced, I think, for sort of old rock and roll bands like this. And yeah, their greatest hits album, no exaggeration, probably changed my life. Like, listening to it made me want to learn guitar, and it's all stemmed from that. So OG's sweet, and also it's 3 of the 4 original members have passed away, so bringing them back and seeing them like in their prime, yeah.
Can't really go wrong with a bit of like Boring Blitz,
Yeah.
Fox on the Run. Just tunes, isn't it? I remember like growing up and like that was played a lot in our house. And yeah, I remember you just absolutely falling in love with that greatest hits album and being played so many times. I remember like you having a Walkman and having that CD burned. Yeah, I remember that. I remember you having that CD burned onto an extra disc ready so you could go and take it out and about. And yeah, that was a big album for you. I remember that. I have one more. As much as I do love their current lineup, I do love Jay Weinberg behind the kit. I love Alessandro. I think he adds something great to it. And obviously we don't have Chris anymore. We have Tortilla Man. I go back to the OG Slipknot lineup, especially like the Iowa era. I think there's something so inspirational for me as a drummer with Joey Jordison, and then his passing recently did affect me quite a bit, and I found myself going back to listening to a lot of older Slipknot recently, and just revisiting and re-finding out why I fell in love with that band so much and how much their music has impacted me. And I think that dynamic between those 2 members who are no longer with us, in terms of Joey and Paul, were the primary songwriters, and out of a bassist and a drummer, out of a band, are creating songs like Duality and Before I Forget, really becoming the core of the songwriting process, I think was something pretty incredible and special. You've seen the countless people that have talked about Joey as well since his passing. You look at what he did with Metallica at Download, when he filled in with Korn. Such a staple of just the metal genre. And then just bringing back Chris again. So yeah, that's my last one, is get that OG lineup back together if we could, but sadly not.
It's another nostalgia-driven one for me. It's Kids in Glass Houses. Such a great band. They weren't even a pop punk band. They were a bop punk band. They were underrated. They should have been so much bigger than they were. And I think they would deserve another chance of being back. I think if they did come back, they would be well received. There's a lot of people that miss that band.
Ended on their own terms?
Ends on their own terms, yeah, as much as I can remember. I don't think they were helped by the whole Lost Profit situation, by being a band from the south of Wales. But yeah, it seemed to end amicably.
If you're a Mayhem fan, you've probably tried to find recordings of Dead doing his vocals, and I think they are better than what we ended up getting on the albums that were recorded after he's passed away. And also Euronymous was sort of, you know, the primary songwriter, so yeah, bring them back from the dead. We won't have Varg on bass.
I was going to say, are we reuniting them all together?
No, Hellhammer on drums, Necrobutcher on bass, please. That's the lineup I'd like. And I'd like to see them in Norway.
In the church?
Oh, Mayhem, yeah. OG Mayhem, please. James, what album would you like to recommend this episode?
I've held off doing this for quite a while. I'm recommending my favourite album of all time. I'm recommending Iowa by Slipknot. There is something so fantastically dark and heavy, and I think in this Halloween kind of spirit, I've got to do it. This, when I first heard it, really just opened my eyes to metal, I think, and the sounds, the emotions, the heaviness, the musicality, and I'd do anything to go back to like 2002 and see them in London on the Disaster Pieces DVD that they did.
Dan, your recommendation?
My recommendation is from a band that I could have put in our segment about bringing bands back from the dead. It's by a band called Crooks, who I've mentioned before on the podcast because I previously recommended their vocalist's new project, Sully. This band and this album, Are We All the Same Distance Apart, is just a forgotten gem for me. This band could have really gone places. They would have been absolutely incredible. I mean, they were incredible but just no one seems to know of them. So the more people that listen to this album, I think the better.
I'm going to go with the theme of spooky and recommend...
Iceland Kills?
Nope.
Ah.
I'm going to recommend I Loved You at Your Darkest by Behemoth. It's a black metal album. James has dropped his head. I think this is the most accessible black metal album I've listened to. So hopefully it's a nice little entry point for you, babe.
I'm looking forward to it.
I don't know what to expect. I'm intrigued. My only exposure to them was at download mostly, where I was standing up asleep because I was tired as anything. I'll go into it with an open mind, I'll tell you that. So we recently released a video. We spent some time looking into the links between Halloween and heavy music. We look back at Kiss, we look back at Black Sabbath, we look back at Robert Johnson. We're bringing it forward to more modern day with Slipknot, Ice Nine Kills, one of Alex's favourite bands, and really kind of take a step back, a little bit of like a nice video essay, and do something that I don't think anyone else has done about really looking into these links. There's a lot more of a relationship between horror and heavy metal than I think most people think from the surface. So please go and check that out.
We've also started vlogging every live show we go to. So if you want to see what we get up to, or want to see some live footage from some of your favourite bands, go and check it out on the channel.
Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. And let us know in the comments your favourite album from this month and who you would like to bring back from the dead. Boo! We're ghosts!